You want to attract a good salesperson? Money talks. And I hear, well, what if an operations guy sees, how much the salespeople make? Tell him to f***ing apply. He's welcome to. There's a lot of crazy shit that happens in sales. You go out, you buy drinks, you take them golfing. It's that easy? No.
The Industrial Growth Institute podcast connects you with the big thinkers, makers, and subject matter experts across all aspects of an integrated B2B industrial revenue growth function. From strategy, board oversight and transactions, through all the phases of manufacturing marketing, the complexities of industrial sales, and the nuances of marketing and sales technology and customer experience, I speak with guests who bring insights, innovative perspectives, best practices, and twists on traditional approaches. Each episode explores high-level thinking and in-the-weeds actionable tactics. If you enjoyed these discussions, then please help me out by liking and sharing the podcast, and especially by leaving a comment and giving a review. So with no further ado, let's jump into this episode. Welcome back to the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. I'm Ed Marsh, your host, and trying a slightly different format today. Instead of the long, carefully prepared interviews with industry experts, we're going to have a free-flowing conversation today. Me and Derek Baer. Derek is a sales expert who will introduce himself to you in a minute. But the point of this is really kind of a speed round of sorts. We're going to pick 5 different topics. We're going to talk about each one for 5 or 7 or maybe 10 minutes and just try to give quick impressions, first reactions, and very authentic answers to questions that I think rattle around in the heads of many people. So we'll jump right into the conversation. But first, Derek, thank you for joining me. And please just quickly introduce yourself to everyone who doesn't know you already.
Ed, thank you very much for having me on the show. My name is Derek Baer, as Ed said, and I am the Vice President of Corporate Training for Curlin & Associates. What we do is specialize in all things sales related, from sales hiring, sales recruiting, sales scripting, sales methodology, sales process, you name it. If you need help, if you think there's an issue, if you think there's a problem, we're one of the people that you would call to help determine whether that's the case. So thank you very much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to the dialogue that we're going to put out today.
All right, so let's just jump into topics. And I'm going to pick one that I think you and I are going to probably disagree on. So right out of the gate, should companies track quotes issued? Is that a metric that is worthwhile in your dashboard to know whether you're on track to hit your targets? What do you say?
I think that they should track quotes issued. What do you think?
I think not, because I think the tracking quotes issued leads to a Goodhart's law kind of a thing, where the KPI ends up dictating the behavior. And what I see routinely is that salespeople, if we talk about baseline selling, which is the methodology and process that I think you primarily work on, we can visualize somebody on first base hearing about some pain, right? A sales rep is talking to a suspect. They hear about some pain. The process then tells them they need to do specific things on the baseline to second base and specific things on the baseline to third base. And only once they've rounded third base would it be appropriate to consider a presentation and a proposal and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that many salespeople have been conditioned, and many buyers have been conditioned to believe that, a next step after that initial meeting where there's some pain discovered, the next step is to do a quote. And so that's such an easy step for many companies. I see so many inadequately qualified deals, inappropriate quotes that are just done reflexively. And I think that using it as a metric just fosters that.
Well, when we talk about this, if there were a benefit, who do you think that would benefit?
A benefit to
monitoring of quotes. To monitoring quotes.
I assume maybe the sales rep and or sales manager.
Agreed. And the reason I think that it's important is, at least from experience, when we'll be working with teams or coaching teams, it seems that there is not enough bandwidth to do the things that the sales reps don't want to do, or the sales managers for that matter. Whether it is, I don't have enough time to prospect, I don't have enough time to cold call, whether it's on the sales management side, I don't have enough time to coach, I don't have enough time to listen in on calls, I don't have enough time to do deal reviews. Whatever those pieces are, when we look at the metrics of how many inappropriate quotes went out there, and depending on the industry, there's some quotes that could take 5 minutes. Okay, I'm fine with that. There's others where it could be automation for a customized solution, and you've got to bring in your internal team to help
Oh,
to
yeah,
figure out if
absolutely.
you
It
can
creates
even
a
do it.
backup with the engineering folks and the sales engineers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and exactly. Then when someone else does need a quote and it's really important, there's a queue, and the queue is too long.
Right.
And if we are to determine that 80% of the quotes that went out didn't go anywhere, it was either closed, lost, or we never heard back. And let's call 80% of the quotes, let's just say that it was 8 out of 10. And we know that it takes 3 hours per quote. Well, what would we be doing differently if we had that time back?
Right.
So that's one piece that we look at. The second piece is for the sales manager. Where am I missing from a coaching standpoint, from a management standpoint, that I didn't hold them accountable to finding a compelling reason or gaining commitment to change or to making sure that this was something that they were even willing to do? Now, we could talk about ability to buy and needing a quote, but my stance here is I'm happy to give a verbal quote. I'm happy to say it's going to be around this much. But if I'm going to put something together on paper, put something in a formal statement, a scope of work that requires resources from my company,
Right.
there is a cost to that. And I think I don't know what the number would be off the top of my head, but to minimize the amount of quotes that went out and came back as nothing, I do think that's an important piece. And I think it's really important for the salesperson to recognize.
How
And
about
even
charging the rep?
more important for the manager. What?
How about charging the rep? How about if you charge the rep, if
I love
this
that.
has to be produced by the engineers on the back end and stuff, and you say, look, if you win the deal, I'll rebate this, but it's going to cost you $250 to get the quote. I wonder if that would focus attention and improve qualification.
I love that idea. And I know, or at least I think I know, it wouldn't go over well
Of course
with
not.
the reps, and they would stop the activity. But this is going to bring me to just a quick story time. And this is a conversation that I had. So talking to reps, outside sales reps that have the capability to pick up the phone, and they do have the capability to set a Zoom meeting and to look at someone just like I'm looking at you right now from across the country. In a conversation where every rep on this team told me they have to be in person, it's the only way for them to get the time, I asked them, I said, well, okay, if you guys were like me, I mean, we're different, obviously. You've got a company that pays your expenses, you've got a base salary, you've got your healthcare, all this insurance, everything's covered. Let's say you were an independent consultant. Would you spend the $750 for the flight and then call it $200 a night for the 5 nights in the hotel with all of your meals that you've got to pay for just so that you could knock on the door and hope that the CEO would be willing to open it and say, yeah, come on in, let's do this?
It's funny you mentioned that.
Fuck no.
I listened to a sales rep in a pipeline review earlier this week talk about he's going to do some networking. He's going to shake some hands. He's going to do some door knocking. How many meetings are you going to have? I mean, what is the objective? What are the KPIs that your manager is holding you accountable for and you expect from yourself? If you spend a day, quote unquote, networking, what's coming out of it?
It's busy work.
Yeah.
It's busy work. Yep. And that's where I understand base salaries are important to a degree, but that's when the base salary causes the rep to just stay busy.
Right.
Because they've got to appear busy and their KPIs and metrics are monitoring them. They're not actually doing anything effective.
All right. So,
and effective would be having the hard conversation. It's not going to get you as many meetings, but the hard conversation that takes you somewhere. That would be my take.
All right. So maybe in a future conversation, we're going to talk about the paying for trade show leads. I think that sometimes reps ought to do that. And we're going to talk more about qualifying opportunities. But back to the tracking quotes for a second. It sounds like what you're saying is it's not a long-term thing, but it's short-term to understand the resources that are consumed. And then I would imagine that you start to build some gateways in the sales process where you need a management review before somebody's going to invest resources in creating a quote. Is that fair?
It's fair. And then I had to ask for your opinion on this. So short term, if it works, but in my experience, whenever you pull back on it, the bad behaviors creep back in. So maybe long term, and hopefully, well, the understanding is we're being monitored on this, that the behavior just stays as improved.
Right.
But once it goes away, it just little by little these bad habits creep back in. So that's my thoughts there. But
Yeah, we'll
I'm
talk
curious
about
what you think.
deal qualification scorecards at some point. But I think if you've got a proper deal qualification, whether it's a scorecard or criteria built into the process to advance between stages or whatever, then you ought to take care of the problem. Anyway,
Yes.
this is, like many of these fascinating topics, we could talk for a long time. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
Are some salespeople simply, incompatible with complex B2B sales?
100%.
How do you know?
I would say, and this is going to go back to traits, whether it's B2B sales, B2C sales, anything promotion related, anything marketing related, if the desire isn't there, it's just not going to happen. And to give you a personal example of this, there was a time where I was looking at doing some side work, just a little bit of side work for for some additional money. And the side work was related to some escrow services. And it was the most boring thing I've ever done. Respect to whoever does this. You can make good money this way. I couldn't stand it. And it doesn't matter the price you put next to it. It just pained me to sit there and be looking over these contracts. And so for me, zero desire just wasn't going to happen. And when we're talking, maybe I'm taking this question a little too far, but when we're talking about are reps compatible, desire has to be there.
Yeah,
it has to be.
So I completely agree. There's some that don't care. There's some that won't do the work. There's some that are independently wealthy, or they grew up thinking $75,000 was a king's ransom. And if they made that much, they had made it in life. But there's also some that just don't, I think, have the language facility, maybe the intellect, the curiosity. They're not able, and business acumen, which I think can be trained, but it's certainly a deficit in many salespeople. If they don't have those attributes, then I think it's really hard to kind of power and improve at the very tactical skills that are necessary to succeed.
I agree. In the business acumen, that's important. The tactical skills, those can be trained to a degree.
Right.
But there's, depending on the level that they'd be calling on, depending on how high or how complex the sale, there's just a level of confidence. And we could say confidence can be built. These are things that can happen. That is going to be a lot harder to develop, and it's going to take a lot longer unless this is your grandson, nephew, relative that you're willing to invest a few years in to get them where they need to be.
Right.
I probably wouldn't hire someone that I felt lacked the confidence, and it shows. I mean, it shows when you have let's use round numbers. You've got a 25-year-old salesperson, and their job is to sell CEOs on a high ticket solution,
Right.
something in the realm of $500,000 per year. And the CEO starts off the conversation and says, "Yeah, well, things are good, but they could always be better. We just came shy of 100 million this year." This is where the business acumen and the confidence comes in. Is that 25-year-old might be thinking, "Holy fuck, I would do anything to create a $100 million business.
Right.
Why would they listen to me? I'm scared to ask the questions that I need to ask in order to get where I need to be. And I'm going to tap out on this call. I'm going to be really nice. I'm going to give my presentation. Then I'm going to say, what do you think we should do next?" And the call is over.
Right.
Versus holding tight, being confident, pushing back, questioning. Sounds like things are going really well. You almost hit $100 million in this last year. Can you help me understand what made you book the call with me? Just having that confidence and the challenger piece,
Right.
the ability to make them think twice, to think this person's different. So yeah, I think there's some very difficult to train pieces in there that are more DNA or belief system related.
Yeah, I mean, I've argued that salespeople ought to have B2B salespeople, complex sales, kind of high ticket, long sales cycle, large buying team sorts of scenarios, that they ought to be at least conversant in business finance. They ought to understand accrual accounting. They ought to understand bonus depreciation. They ought to understand how capital investments get stack ranked to make decisions about what a company is going to buy. But I'd also say that not only is there innate confidence. And one of the reasons I love hiring military veterans and NCAA athletes is I think that they tend to have some of that. But I think there's also a component of confidence that the company owns. And I talk about sales karma. One of the things that I see is companies bitch about the way prospects treat their salespeople. Oh, they didn't call us back or they ghosted us or whatever. And then if you can be a fly on the wall in their office as they talk about their vendors, they talk trash about vendors. Now, a lot of salespeople, they don't deserve a ton of respect. They're not contributing a lot of value. I mean, as people, they deserve respect. As salespeople, they're not contributing value. However, if you build a culture where your sales team wanders the halls and hears your purchasing people, your executive team, your engineers that are talking to vendors, whatever, all complain about how the salespeople are dumb or wasting their time or that kind of stuff, well, guess what? I believe that gets reflected in low confidence in your sales team. They're told that's the way the world thinks about salespeople. And so I'm just in that category too.
I've never thought about it like that, but I would completely agree. You're going to hear it. It's going to slowly seep into your skin.
You internalize it.
You're going to internalize it. And unless this is going back to the business acumen, this is going back to the natural confidence, unless you are unshakable,
right,
to a degree, unshakable, where, yeah, they can say that, but that's not applicable to me because I know that I'm doing this differently. And I'm not saying uncoachable,
right,
but just, yeah, they are talking about most salespeople, but I'm not most.
Right.
I'm the human salesperson, and I am in the elite. I don't just pitch. I ask questions, I listen, and I'm willing to walk away early. That's where that confidence needs to come in. But going back to the early roots of where that starts, that salesperson has to have had some mentor, taken it upon themselves to do reading,
right,
watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts. If you don't know that's a possibility, it's very hard for you to come up with that on your own. And yeah, you'll just be jaded by the shit talking that you hear
right,
everywhere else.
All right. So what makes a great sales rep? Let's tackle that. And it sounds like, let's start with, should they be cocky? Not necessarily arrogant, certainly not, constrained by cognitive bias. But if we want confident, is cocky a good thing?
I don't think cocky is a good thing.
Okay. How do you draw the line?
Cocky is where it tips. That's right where it tips. The beginning of cocky is where someone is so good that they, or at least believes they're so good that they are unwilling to be coached.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get this done. Watch this. I don't need to try that. Just give me another try. So taking it a degree back, I think there's a level of healthy confidence. And I also think there's a level of, and you may disagree with this, but imposter syndrome that's important. And I'll use myself as an example. I remember my first sales role that was inside sales over the phone, making 80 to 100 calls per day. I went in thinking that I would be good at sales, thinking I would. I went in thinking I'm charismatic and I'm pretty social, but that's all I really knew. My peers thought, oh, Derek's going to kill it. Like, oh, he's going to be so good at sales. He's got the gift of gab. When we're in trouble and the police come, he's the one talking to the cops from a young age.
Right.
Now, where I think that tips into cocky was if I believed them, if I listened to what they said, and I just thought, I'm going to go in here and just absolutely kill this role,
right,
that's where it probably would have hurt me. I went in afraid to a degree, not afraid like, oh, I can't do this, but I really cared from an intrinsic motivation standpoint. I wanted to be successful to prove to my friends that thought that I was going to be able to do it, that I could. And the shame of me saying, yeah, I was there for 4 or 6 weeks, it just didn't work out, that was a non-negotiable. That could not happen. I knew I needed to make it at least 6 months. I needed to be in the top tier of however many closers there were for a few times. And then at that point, if I didn't enjoy selling, I would have left. But
all right, so confident but not cocky.
Yeah, confident but not cocky.
How about industry knowledge? Every company I talk to says that a great sales rep has to come knowing everything about their industry. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, disagree. There's a time I would have agreed, but I disagree.
And the argument is often that theirs is so unique and so specialized, and their buyers expect to have deeply technical questions, and the sales rep won't have credibility if they can't answer those questions. Does that shift you at all?
That just shows me that they have a shitty onboarding.
All right. So I agree in principle. I disagree in the reason. I believe that industry knowledge is a double-edged sword. You have most companies with this kind of a complex, big ticket, large buying team, technical sale, have engineering resources or technical resources that can be brought to bear when they need to. And I absolutely believe that there are technical buyers on the buyer side whose job is to make sure they dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that this is not going to embarrass them because of, remember when the Mars lander crashed 15 years ago because one team was using metric and one was using imperial. I mean, that's what the engineers are there to do, to make sure they're not overlooking something like that. At the same time, no engineer ever strokes the check to make a capital investment. Those decisions are made at a business level. And if somebody is hired for technical knowledge and they need to, their kind of project is something that gets decided by the CEO, the owner, the board of directors, which increasingly I see happening, they need to be able to have the business conversation. The technical stuff is more like to eliminate it. The business stuff is to get it approved. And I believe the industry knowledge gets in the way because they default to having the comfortable conversations.
I would agree. I would agree fully with that. So taking a step back to the onboarding or preparing your salesperson to be ready for whatever, do you believe in the 80-20 principle or Pareto's law?
So conceptually, I do. I don't know where you're applying it in onboarding.
Well, if you look at everything that the salesperson needs to know, everything, if they were an industry expert, there's probably 20% of that knowledge that's going to come up 80% of the time.
Fair.
I believe that if you front load that in your onboarding and you make sure they're getting really caught up to speed on the terms that matter, the people that matter, the hot buttons that matter, who have we done this before? How has it worked? Who have we done this before and it didn't work? What's the competitor's advantage? How do we sell against them? I mean, you name it.
Right.
But it's probably 20% of everything that's going to come up all the time. And I think that someone could be extremely deadly knowing these things, as opposed to someone that is full of industry knowledge and can't pick up a phone or is unwilling to ask a question because it makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
So industry knowledge is important. I believe the important pieces of industry knowledge can be taught.
So you need to find somebody like in the world of capital equipment. You need somebody that's reasonably mechanically savvy, who understands manufacturing process, sees how a step fits into a system. They need that kind of knowledge from a technical perspective. What else does it take to make a great sales rep?
I think that great sales rep, someone that is coachable, that's going to be important. Someone that is willing to be humbled, somebody that is not afraid to do the hard things, even if they know it's going to crash and burn. And to mirror that or to add to that, in order to have a great sales rep, you need them to have a great sales manager or sales leader that makes them feel comfortable with failure. There's going to be failure all the time. And when the sales rep knows, as long as I do exactly what I was told, as long as I agree with it and it's not unethical, but as long as I follow these things, my manager's got my back. Now, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't listen to what they say and I start going rogue and just go straight to the presentation or, you name it. But someone that is willing to fall on their face and get up and do it again. So the ability to handle rejection. Somebody that I think the biggest thing that I think, there's no question, the biggest weakness that gets in the way is need for approval. And if you can get someone to understand, at the end of the day, your family loves you, your dog loves you, you are not this salesperson. Today, when you get here at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., you're putting on a sales hat. From 8 to 5, when you're on your calls, you are a different person. And when that's done, you go back to being you. That's what it takes. Just the willingness to humble yourself, keep going, keep pushing, and continue trying different things. Like, we're never done developing, ever, or at least we shouldn't be.
All right, trying different things. Do you believe that decks have a place in complex sales or not?
Like pitch decks?
Yes.
This is a good question. I'm going to say it depends.
Come on, that's a cop out. I'll let you think about it for a second. I'll answer.
Yeah, you can answer this one.
So potentially at the end, when what you're doing is recapping what you've learned about their business objectives, the problem, the implications of the problem, you're explaining how your solution addresses it, what the reasonable outcomes are, what the timeline is, that the investment matches, it's reasonable given the magnitude of the problem they have. I think that a slide deck can fit into that. And I think there can be a couple of slides in the deck that foster trust, maybe a couple testimonials, maybe mentions of similar kinds of companies or similar kinds of customers. However, in general, when I see a marketing team and a sales manager talk about a pitch deck, what they mean is we're going to try to get a meeting, we're going to prospect, we're going to get a meeting, and then we're going to vomit this crap up that's our agenda talking about us before we ever get around to asking about them or their problems or their initiatives or what they're wrestling with. So I see decks as a crutch for weak salespeople, and I believe that decks kill more potential opportunities in the cradle than they ever help to win.
I 100% agree with that. The reason I was on the fence is it is a crutch for weak salespeople. And it's what they just, boom, that's what I'm going to, because all I know how to do is talk about our products and services and how they're going to help you. And you can help me with this. So from personal experience, now I think a deck that is created for the right reasons and presented at the right time and to the compelling reason for change, and that addresses the summary of everything that was discussed, really showing you paid attention, right. That extra effort, nothing wrong with that. Like that can absolutely help you close the deal. In my experience, I would say call it the last 5 years, the more information that I was requested to present, the likelihood of me closing the deal significantly went down.
Yeah,
the less information I had to present, no decks, nothing else, just getting them emotionally to like, yep, we got to make this change. Those are the deals that move the fastest and were the best clients. So that's why I'm kind of in between there.
And those are conversations. Maybe there's something that gets sketched on the whiteboard. Maybe there's some notes. Maybe there's a quick recap email. All right, let me just make sure I'm hearing you say, this is the problem. This is why you got to fix it. This is what happens if you don't. You need it done by this. Here's the alternatives you considered. Here's why we've agreed it makes sense to do it our way. Then, there is no need for a deck. And in that situation, I'll never forget, as a very young salesperson, hearing Dave Curlin tell me that a quote is a written confirmation of a verbal agreement to do business. And if you think of that final step, the written confirmation for somebody to sign or whatever, that really is confirming everything you've discussed, then you realize that it is that discussion. It's the discussion that builds trust. It's the discussion that builds credibility. There's nothing on a slide that if you're talking to that CEO of the $100 million company that you mentioned, that's going to get them to decide to do something. All that's on that slide is going to do is, wait a minute, can't this person think for themselves? Or that's not relevant to me? Or, this is not what I thought I was going to be listening to. I don't have time for this. Only bad things come out of those pitch decks.
Agreed fully.
All right. How about accelerators? When we talk about comp plans, are accelerators a good thing?
Yes.
All right, but companies freak out when they see how much they're paying somebody.
They freak out when they see how much they're paying somebody, but if the accelerator is done correctly, it should be to incentivize that sales rep taking it further or changing a behavior. And when you and I are talking about accelerators, I'm talking about the reason to, there's two ways that this can happen in my mind is I'm at 125% of quota, and I'm feeling pretty good. I could sit back for the next quarter.
And sandbag some stuff, so I know I've got a head start on next year.
Some stuff. Perfect. And sandbag things. Or I could try to pull those into this quarter. I'm going to have to work harder in the next quarter. But because I've been incentivized and I can get these, when you're saying accelerators, we used to call them kickers, but put a kicker on it. yes, I am going to absolutely try to push to blow these goals out of the water.
So in other words, a typical accelerator might be, here's your annual number. If you hit your annual number before the end of Q3, everything in Q4, you make an extra 10% on, or you get an extra 50 grand plus an extra 5% or whatever whatever works from a math perspective, depending on what you're selling.
Yeah. Something along those lines.
And if you can hit it by mid-year, then you're really doing well. Now, the other thing that companies worry about is, well, you have a windfall deal. Just because it fell into somebody's lap, it's their next door neighbor who just got promoted as CEO of whatever, and they have this deal. Why should we pay them all that money? They didn't do anything different for this deal than they would for others.
As far as if it was an accelerator?
Yes.
Well, then I guess why should they pay them at all? Because they didn't have to do anything anyway, and it fell into their lap. So, you could look at it from both ways.
And for the other people in the company who don't have to deal with the crap the salespeople have to deal with, they're not worried of the pressure making their number. They're not worried about getting put on a PIP. They're not up at 4 a.m. to catch the 6 o'clock flight because they got to be somewhere. They look at the salespeople and see the money they make without understanding the deals they work on that go nowhere. Those that they, have been assured are going to close that never do. How do you explain sales comp plans to other people in the company?
This one I have no answer for. I can tell you what I've told HR. I can tell you what I've told CEOs. I can tell you what I've told people that were concerned about it. I encourage my clients, if they want to find a good rep, to not shy away from putting the on-target earnings into the job posting. You want to attract a good salesperson, money talks. Right. Now, that's not everyone's main motivation, but it's sure as shit going to get you more applicants if they can see what's possible if they do the job well. Right. Then I hear, well, but what if an operations guy sees, how much the salespeople make? Tell him to fucking apply. He's welcome to. Operations, there's a lot of hard shit that goes on there that I wouldn't want to deal with, but there's a lot of crazy shit that happens in sales that, we think about it, you go out, you buy drinks, you take them golfing, it's that easy. No. Let's talk about it from a psychological perspective. Let's talk about it from being the closest thing to real magic that we can come up with. I'm going to talk to a stranger who doesn't want to talk to anybody. And I'm going to have to quickly get them to recognize that they have a problem that they weren't aware of. And not only am I a stranger who poked or prodded at them a little bit to make them feel slightly uncomfortable, then I'm going to have to take it deeper to get them to an emotional space where they think, man, if I do make this change, this could really help me, or this might take me to XYZ, you name it. And then after that, I've got to try to convince the other decision makers that are involved with this, or a board of directors, that this stranger that no one knows and no one's talked to before is capable of taking your $300,000 to $500,000 and spinning it into something much bigger. Right. That takes magic. So I welcome anybody to apply. And if you're good at it, even better. We'd love to have you. Yeah, that's where my stance is.
I actually help the client. I help companies with certain kinds of recruiting situations, and help the client create a job posting for a very challenging capital equipment sales job, probably about a month and a half ago. And it got posted, and 24 hours later, there was a major scandal in the company about our salespeople are making that much money because we put OTE in there. And the initial reaction was to take it down, which I protested, but the client stipulated it had to be taken down. But then I think they did satisfactorily address it because it's back up and they're getting some interesting candidates.
Good.
All right. Good. How about having an underperformer on the team? And so we could have different kinds. We could have the jerk who isn't producing and is cancerous. Or we could have somebody with a great attitude, longtime loyal employee. They're just not hitting their number. And, I love the expression Frank Slootman from used to run Snowflake had, that we can be very patient with performance, but we're impatient with behavior. So in other words, if they're doing the work you expect them to do, and they're working and following the coaching and trying to improve in their tactical skills and improve performance, at some point you just say, they're not making it. So if you have an underperformer on the team, is it a problem to let them stay there?
Yeah. And
even if they have the good attitude as opposed to being the punk?
Even if they had the best attitude. And I'll tell you my thoughts on this. Now, from a holistic standpoint, it could be a feel-good thing. I get that. And we're going to put this into a sports analogy, and I hate to use baseball on this. It pains me to use baseball, but let's say that we had the bat boy or the ball boy, however you want to refer to it. They can help with the team chemistry. They can keep it lively in the locker room. They travel with you. It's just someone you care about. But if I'm paid on performance and the ball boy or the bat boy is also taking at bats and costing us games, I'm fucking pissed. Whether I'm the coach, whether I'm the hitting coach, whether I'm a player. And if I've got someone on my sales team that is just a wonderful person to be around, but they're taking leads that could be going to me,
Right.
I have a problem with it. If they are screwing up a territory, because whoever's going to go into the territory after, even if it was the nicest guy who never really got anywhere, but just had, 6 or 7 discovery calls in a row to where your company name is now burned because they look and say, Ed, I'm never talking to Edge March Sales School again because the last time I did, we wasted 6 hours. I think it's a problem for anyone moving forward. Now, do you axe the person? No, find a role for them that works. But it takes away, it deters from the existing sales team, and it also spreads the message of if you don't perform, but you're just a nice guy, nice gal, your family. And I don't want that. I want the bottom 20% to always be, I'm not a lead by fear type person, but I am a lead by accountability.
Right.
And if you're in the bottom 20%, you're getting cut.
Yeah.
And that's how we're going to build a good team.
Our mutual friend, Walter Crosby, has an expression. I'm going to screw it up, but I think he says essentially, you get the behavior that you accept. And he's absolutely right about that.
Yeah. I think it leads to complacency.
It also, I would say the inverse. They say that you're the what is it, like the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're hanging out with high performers, then you will level up your game. If you hang out with mediocre or low performers, then it's going to drag you down, I believe, no matter how superb you are individually.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And how about the punk? How long do you let the punk hang out? Do you put them on a pip, or if they're a punk, are they just gone?
10 days. And I'm just throwing out 10 days because if they're a punk, I'm imagining that they're a punk every day, and it only takes so much back talk or so much, I got this, or you don't know what you're talking about. I'm pretty quick to let things like that go. There's other degrees in my life where I may hang on to something a little too long to try to make it work. But underperformers, if you tell someone something 2-3 times and they're just not making the change, it's not going to happen. I'll give you a really, really, really good example. It happened today. It's happened to me today. I have been working with the sales team for the last, few years, and there's someone on the sales team who I have reminded the same thing over and over and over again, to the degree that, like Bart Simpson had to write on the wall, "I will not talk in class," 500 times. I have a picture. I shit you not, I'll send it to you. I had to have them write down, "I will not talk about price unless it's in context to the problem," because they just kept presenting. Now, fast forward to today, I had a sales call with someone's selling me. And I love watching salespeople work. 2 days ago was the first call. At the end of the call, the salesperson said, "Is there anything that you would instruct me on or change, like knowing what I do for a living?" Right. I gave him 1 pointer. We had a second call. And I told him, I said, "Well, this is the second call. It's with a different level of decision maker. You're in my conversation." Because I'm kind of trying to coach him as I'm doing this, but you're in my conversations are relevant to his vantage point. So just start the call over, run it with him. And it was like, any coach's dream. Right when it came time to ask the question that he didn't ask me, he nailed it. Right on point. Wow. Asked the hard question. And it led to the next person. We both agreed at the end of it. We're like, yeah, we're going to do this. Now, it was not because of that coaching point I made, but that just shows the right person that really cares about getting better. It shouldn't take, it's like in a sport where maybe you're a little off balance or maybe your positioning is off, like a golf swing. Sure, you might need some more correction on getting that angle or getting that swing, like right there. But the idea to remember to do it, that shouldn't take 10 times. So long-winded answer again, but I just experienced this today. And yeah, if you tell someone something more than 3 times, they're probably not going to change.
And how about if a prospect calls up and complains about a sales rep?
That depends on what the complaint is.
Okay.
I would really want to field that. It was did the sales rep, let me take a step back again. As a salesperson, we should be a magician with the craft of lowering resistance. If the prospect is pissed off, this is definitely a coaching opportunity in some way, but it doesn't always mean the rep was wrong. It could just be a dickhead prospect, but I would at least want to understand where it happened, because for them to pick up the phone and make the call, something was delivered at the wrong time. Something was asked out of context, and it's room for improvement. And so I love room for improvement.
So I was at sales rep one time. I remember I'd worked with this guy, and he was talking about buying a machine. And I think I came in on the red eye the night before, and he wanted another meeting. So I was tired. I was cranky. I've got a low need for approval anyway. And he talked about some, completely new iteration. I can't remember his name. Steve, call him Steve. I said, Steve, I got to tell you, I don't think you're serious about buying this. If you change your mind, you know how to get in touch with me. And he called my boss, actually called my boss's boss, and said, he's a jerk. I was getting ready to order this machine. I don't know if I want to work with him anymore. I'm not sure I'm going to buy from you. And I was very fortunate that there was a strong culture of sales training and sales courage in the company. And so, there was a little bit of discussion about how could you have asked it differently? How might you say it differently? How could you soften it? But I think there was actually respect for the fact that I had essentially called him on it, that we had played games long enough, and it was time. If you want to buy, fine. If you don't, that's okay. But we're done jaw-jacking about it.
Well, now I'm curious. So in hindsight, knowing what you know now and looking back on, hearing that from you, and I can't see the recording, I can't see the tone that
this
it was
was
set
long
in,
before there was recordings.
Well, yeah, I don't think you did anything wrong. Like I actually don't. And maybe the tone, but it also, when something like that happens, the person probably wasn't going to buy. And because you nailed him with it, it pissed him off because it was true.
In the end, he bought. Maybe it was just to spite me. Who knows?
Out of spite to prove a point.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, so we've been through, I think, 5 or 6 points. Should companies track quotes? Are there some salespeople that simply can't be trained to thrive in complex sales? What makes a great sales rep? We took a detour into industry knowledge. We talked about accelerators and a little bit around comp plans, and we talked about having an underperformer on the team. So I think a pretty good kind of speed round here on some different stuff. And anything you want to wrap up with, Derek?
The only thing I would I agree. I love the topics we discussed. The only thing I would wrap up on is just a statement or something for anybody that's in sales to think about. And this isn't a go out and pay for sales training right now, but I find it fascinating that I've got buddies that pay for nutrition coaches, which I think that's great. I think it's a good idea. Lifting coaches, golf lessons, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you name it. They spend money on the best gyms. Almost none of them are going to be a professional jiu-jitsu grappler, or whatever you want to call it. Almost none of them are going to be a professional golfer, professional weightlifter, model, whatever. But almost everyone that I know, the majority of my friends, are in professional sales. That's their job.
And what percentage invest in that?
None.
It's crazy.
That's what perplexes me. So I guess my last statement there would be, if you look at your job as just a job and you really enjoy golf, or you really enjoy the way you feel when you work with a nutritional coach, what do you think the majority of your week, which for the better part is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, what would your life be like if you got really good at selling and you just really looked forward to every day at work? Like how much different would the rest of your life be? So that's something I would say to leave out there.
So that's an argument for somebody to spend 10 or 20,000 or however much, but they don't even have to do that. Listen to Keena's podcast. Read Baseline Selling, read Challenge a Sale, just pick up books or get Audible. If you're in the car, if you got windshield time, listen on Audible. If you're on an airplane, get them on Kindle. I mean, there's so much information out there, and it's not all right. It's not all great, but it's all going to help you understand more about your craft. Completely agree. Cool.
Take what you like, piece it together. And it's funny you say that. I'm currently listening to Gap Selling for the 5th time on Audible, and I do it when I do my cardio.
And
20 minutes in the
what
morning.
I love doing is I love asking people to read Gap Selling, but I tell them you got to listen to the podcast, because if you think that the way I'm coaching you to be a sales manager or the questions I'm asking you is tough, wait until you listen to the way Keenan addresses these people in front of an audience of people, where he says something like, shut the fuck up and listen to what I'm trying to tell you. I mean, that's what a sales manager needs to do. And if you don't have the thick enough skin to deal with that to get yourself better, then, go somewhere else. Anyway.
Yeah, the phones are going to be rough if you can't handle that from someone who cares about you.
All right. So we'll wrap up here. Derek, great conversation. Thanks for joining me. Hope we can make this a periodic thing and tackle more topics like this.
And thank you very much for having me.
And everyone listening, this is the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. I'm Ed Marsh, your host. You'll find a wide range of topics in this podcast. We're going to try this as a periodic thing with this kind of speed round, fast conversation, make it a little bit lighter. But there's a lot of episodes that you can look at, and there's more coming where we'll dive deep with a single person into a particular expertise that they have. Thanks for joining and listening. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe.